Barry, Julian, come on up. Joel Steiger, I say that right, Joel? Yeah. And John Nagler. Just good. We got a Nagler over there, you know, as a city attorney. Really? Yeah.
Nagler.
There's an attorney too, very. You know.
Okay.
Okay.
Just hang up.
Are we on general public comment?
Yeah, this is general public comment, yeah. Let me just see what I got. I got John Nagler there, I got Joel Steiger, I got Barry.
Julian.
Okay, David, you got it right. Great. Why don't you just sit throwing up?
The three of us are going to speak about the same thing. I don't know what this gentleman is going to talk about. And David's going to speak about the same thing as us.
But it's a general comment?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Go for it. You're up, Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glenn Bailey, making general public comment today. First of all, in general, and I know there's some specific projects on the agenda, but in general, I'm not sure what happened at a January meeting of the Transportation Committee, but there were 3 speed limit increases on streets, including Mason Avenue, Roscoe Boulevard. They were in the West Valley, and I'm not sure that they got a full public process through this committee. I'm not sure if they were, if there was no quorum of the committee or they were waived, but anyway, they went to full council and the hearing was held in full council. One of those projects in particular, Mason, was very controversial within the Chatsworth Neighborhood Council. And so I guess my comment is that as a matter of policy, I think it would be prudent to not have any of the speed limit increases waived out of committee or conduct the public hearing in council so that we have an opportunity to get some advance notice, because there are people who are interested in a number of these. So that's a general comment. General comment there.
Please get with Paul Backstrom on my staff on any particulars like that, so that doesn't happen again.
Right. So
Mr. Chair, if I can just clarify, they were scheduled for committee, they were properly agendized, they did go to council, they were approved by the council, so they were not waived, and they went through the normal process.
Right, but I don't think the public hearing was held in committee because there was a hearing held in council, and generally.
In addition to the hearing that we had here. We had them on the agenda and we approved them.
And you had a quorum? Okay. All right. So it passed by me then. I apologize for that. But in general, the thing is that we have now a number of these that have been pending for like 3 years, and it's sort of a surprise when all of a sudden they reappeared after 3 years. So we need to.
It should get notice, and it should be done in a proper way so that the hearings are robust. Thank you for that comment. Barry?
Hi, Barry Julian. I'm here with several residents of Iredell Street, Studio City, California. To refresh some people's memory, we are Fryman Canyon, Willacre Park, part of Santa Monica Conservancy. It's a very popular hiking area. We've gone through the rounds, talked to everyone that'll listen to us for several years. We came here back in July, and you guys unanimously agreed with us, and we were looking for a temporary parking district extension.
Right.
And I think you guys all said we'll throw it to the city attorney, and we could change. I think Department of Transportation was supportive that it shouldn't be a problem to extend, to correct the mistake that was made. And so it's kind of more of a reminder. We have not heard anything. The problem is actually exacerbated tremendously. We're unaware of anything. We've not heard. We've tried to contact people. We heard one time there was conversation with Department of Transportation, but this is back in July. We knew it would take some time, but we have not heard of any progress. And as I said, the situation is worse. We're fearing the spring and summer.
Is there somebody from staff who can respond to that? Since I remember that event itself, and you all were in the room here. We have a great deputy chief or whatever we're calling him. Pen? Go for it.
Amir Sadati, civil servant to the city of Los Angeles.
go.
I apologize, I just walked in and I didn't realize this was agendized, so which particular extension?
Comment, he said.
This is on Iredell Street in
Iredell,
Studio
okay.
City off of Fryman.
Okay, so I guess,
This is a violation of the Brown Act. Really, Mr. Sadati cannot discuss. It's a general public,
Okay,
it needs
well,
to be...
make sure you get with this gentleman, because this was something we approved here in July, and nothing has happened on the street, and it's gotten worse.
we met with the council office, we met with them, but we'll be able to give them an update.
Okay, please, get with him then.
Thank you very
okay?
much.
Even though we're not allowed to interact, you're up here for it. Okay. You must be,
Steiger.
there you go, yes.
I don't want to waste your
Joel.
time, Joel. I'm Joel Steiger. I live on Iredell Street as well. And the only thing I can add to what Barry just said is that the problem has actually gotten considerably worse. More and more people have discovered that you can park for nothing on our street.
No, it's a no-brainer for me. He's right over there. Go for it.
Okay,
Thank you.
we're done.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll go
Yeah,
right over
same
there.
thing. Which one were you? John Nagler. Okay, John. I'm talking to your Nagler over here, too, on the side. David Wiggins? Where's David? Oh, great. Sorry about that, too. Okay, bring the whole world over. Come on. Okay, then we have Barry Johnson. Hey, you same issue, Barry?
Basically, just wanted to say I'm with the Studio City Neighborhood Council Transportation Committee member, and the residents up there have basically hit a dead end, so hopefully their conference will be fruitful.
Great, you're right out in the hall.
And just, we've got a street with a parking lot and a trailhead, and only half the street has parking restrictions, and they're in the half that doesn't have it, so they're adversely affected. Thanks.
Thank you for coming on their behalf, too. You can go in the back and deal with the whole group there. Okay, that is public comment. Anybody else for general public comment? Going once, going twice, general public comment is now closed. Could we do the items, starting with item 1?
Item number 1 is a Board of Transportation Commissioners report and ordinance relative to increasing the speed limit from 35 to 40 miles an hour on Kester Avenue between Satakoy and Victory Boulevard, and on Kester between Magnolia and Ventura Boulevards.
Did you catch that? Mumble, folks? Those for item number 1. Could I have Dennis Hickman up? Could I have, is it Ray Berg? Okay, I'm sorry about mispronunciations.
Can we get the staff report first?
Is there somebody here from staff for this item? Sure. For item 1. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Brian Gallagher, Senior Transportation Engineer for the Department of Transportation. For Kester, between Satakoy and Victory, and between Magnolia and Ventura, we're proposing that the speed limit be revised to go from 35 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour, so that that street would be eligible to be enforced by the police department for speeding using electronic enforcement devices. The speed limit was set based upon the critical speed, which is the speed that 85% of the drivers are traveling at or lower. For Satakoy for Kester between Satakoy and Victory, the critical speed was 39.2 miles per hour, and we're recommending a 40 mile per hour speed limit. If we kept the speed limit the same, 39.5% of the drivers would be eligible to get tickets. We don't have an accident pattern on that street. It's a secondary highway. We checked the location and did not see any unusual roadway characteristics that were unapparent to the drivers. And we worked with the Van Nuys and Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council on this to make sure that they were aware of what we're doing. For the segment of Kester between Victory and Magnolia, we are recommending no change on that segment. Even though the critical speed was 40 miles per hour, we determined that there were a lot of jut-outs in the roadway that were unexpected to drivers, and it was next to an elementary school, and it was forcing a lot of pedestrians in the roadway. And so for that location, we wanted to take a 5-mile-an-hour reduction and keep the speed limit the same. And then for the segment between Magnolia and Ventura, the critical speed was 41 miles per hour. We're recommending a 40-mile-per-hour speed limit. We don't have an accident pattern there. And right now, 54% of the drivers are traveling faster than the 35-mile-an-hour speed.
Yeah, let me just ask you this. I'm naive on these things. Why don't we enforce it at 35 so that they don't get up to 40?
Well, today, the speed limit has expired. We're not able to enforce it by radar unless we have a traffic engineering study done and adopted by the City Council. The speed limit that the City Council adopts has to comply with the state law, which is where we have to set the speed limit based upon the critical speed that drivers are traveling at. And in some cases, we're able to take a 5-mile-an-hour reduction below that speed, but only where we have a documented pattern of a significant number of accidents or where we have roadway characteristics that are unapparent to drivers, where you would have either pedestrians or something in the roadway that the cars wouldn't be, the drivers wouldn't be expecting and that they couldn't see, and that once they saw that object, they wouldn't have the time to react and avoid it.
Okay. Question. A lot of cyclists are here, and they're obviously here. I can't speak for them, but if my instincts are right, they like to keep it from going faster because they're riding their bikes. And if people are breaking the speed limit now, 85% or 57, well, damn it, can't we just nail them for that and let the cyclists continue to have their safety notion?
Well, something that we do look at when we do our engineering studies for the speed limits is we look at pedestrians and bicycle circulation in the area. We want to make sure that the pedestrians are able to walk on the sidewalk or at least out of traffic if there's no sidewalk. We also look at the same for the bicyclists. We want to make sure that the roadway is wide enough so that bicycles and vehicles are not forced to use the same roadway, especially where you have curves or hills where a car might come over the hill and then there might be a bike right in front of it. So that is something that we definitely consider.
But I'm just saying basically, if a person's going over the speed limit and you're saying 80% do this and 70% and 65%, well, isn't that the problem that needs to be dealt with rather than changing the speed limit to make it more accommodating for the automobile?
Well, that's something that we try to anticipate well in advance of the speed limit expiring, and sometimes we're able to take actions to try to maybe slow down the traffic or introduce other traffic control elements into the roadway so that when the engineering study is done and the speeds are measured, that those speeds would still be the same as the existing speed limit or less. But once the data is collected, it's too late. And at that point, we have to follow the state law and either set the speed limit based upon the speed that people are actually traveling at, or if the accident pattern shows that most of the drivers are not successful at driving at that speed because there's a high accident pattern, then we can recommend a lower speed limit.
Sure. It's easier to understand it when you're talking about traffic accidents to lower it. But if I'm a cyclist and I'm going 35 and the cars are going 35, I feel kind of comfortable. But if they are going 40 or 45, because it's a stretch away, why should we accommodate the automobile versus the safety of a cyclist?
Well, as you know, we have a new bicycle master plan.
Yeah.
So we are looking at ways of providing striped bike lanes to separate the bicyclist from the automobiles.
Yeah.
But when we do our speed limit studies, if there is not a bike lane on that street, we do look at the roadway width to try to see if the lane is wide enough so that there is a separation. And if there's not a separation, then we can look at the accident rate or the accident history to see if there's actually a pattern of accidents between bikes and cars. In most cases, though, and there was a 1992 Federal Highway Administration study on the effects of lowering and raising speed limits, and it showed that whether you raise the speed limit or lower the speed limit by as much as 15 miles an hour, the 85th percentile of the drivers is pretty much going to be constant. There's almost, over all the studies, the average change was about 0%. And that same study showed that when you adjust the speed limit to match that critical speed that the drivers are traveling at, more often than not, the number of accidents went down. But in cases where you artificially lowered the speed limit below the critical speed that most of the drivers were traveling at, in those cases, there was more potential for an increase in the number of accidents. So we just want to set the posted speed equal to the speed that drivers are traveling out there today, so that we can get enforcement of the speed, so that we can keep that speed limit, that speed at what it is, or possibly to have it go even lower.
Okay, I appreciate your logic, but my logic would basically say if they're breaking the speed limit now, nail them now, and not raise the speed limit. Officer?
Thank you. I'm Officer Troy Williams. I'm the Radar Laser Coordinator for Valley Traffic Division. The question you have about trying to keep the speed limit low through enforcement is impractical, because the only way to keep people driving at 35 miles per hour is to have the police there 24/7. Secondly is the speed limit is it's not illegal for motorists to travel over the speed limit if it's safe for the conditions. In California, the vehicle code says it's called the basic speed law, meaning it's a recommendation. If the speed limit is 35 miles an hour, a motorist can travel 35 or 40 miles an hour based on the conditions, even 45 miles an hour, and wouldn't automatically be illegal. It's only illegal to exceed the speed limit when you reach the max state speed of 65 miles per hour. So when you have a speed limit of 35 miles per hour, we can't hold people to that even if we wanted to. At 40 miles an hour, 45 miles per hour, then we can articulate that these speeds are unsafe and start doing enforcement. But if there's no survey, then we legally can't enforce the speed, and there'll be no speed enforcement, which means we allow the motorists who travel down Kester to drive it at will at whatever speeds they want. And the best solution to that is having a speed limit enforceable that the police department can enforce when the need arises, whether it be through the community or an incident. But moreover, one last thing I just want to say real quick, sir, is we're not raising speeds. We've had speed limit increases over the last 5 years. The speed limit is only being raised to what the 85th percentile is already traveling at, and that's how the state legislator sets the standards, is that we want to set the speed limit to what the majority of people driving at. Then the police department can enforce the top 15% violators through enforcement.
Well, God bless you, but I don't like the law, to be honest with you, but it is the law of the land. And I know Mr. Labange has got at least one of these is in your area.
Absolutely. Here's the situation, Bill. There used to be gnarly sheriffs in the state, and they would have little speed limits off of 99 where they would capture people, and they call them sucker traps. Over the years, they said you have to be fair. If the people are going at a safe speed, they have to do this. So the state superseded the county and the municipality. You made good points. But in this particular case, there's three things you can do about traffic. I'll ask Mr. Weezer. He's a Princeton man. They're called the 3 E's. You know what they are? Education, enforcement, and engineering. You got two of the three there. We have to educate more of the people to slow down. But at the same time, if the officer says he could enforce the law and get ticket citations, that slows everybody down. And on this issue here. And if there's any engineering that you could do, but in this particular case, these are big, wide valley streets. So, I didn't, wait a second, let me finish. I don't like the fact that we have to raise speed limits, but this is what you have to do based on the law if you're going to enforce the law. Okay, correct? What we have present. Now, if the CLA would like to come up with some answer to address this in the state, but right now we got to get this, because I'm tired of seeing you not being able to give tickets to people who speed.
Hey, while he's saying that, and the point is that all these cards are the same issue, but for different streets. Am I right about that? So with that as a backdrop, we're trying to make it more robust so that all of your comments, you can come up and deal with each one of them rather than separately all that time. That's my logic for Tom speaking and everybody else and the two city officials there. Please.
Yeah, well, if we're speaking about all of these in the aggregate,
yes.
I've gotten complaints about item number 2 on Chandler Boulevard, both that there's a fear that cyclists will be in danger because there is more cycling on Chandler Boulevard, and in addition, we have a lot of pedestrians, particularly in the Orthodox community, Friday night, Saturday, sometimes in the dark, often clothed entirely in black. And you'll have people, going at least 45 miles an hour, probably faster once we increase this. I have a lot of concerns, state legislation notwithstanding. It's very hard for me to vote for that particular change on that particular street.
Please, Brian.
We're aware of the conditions that are on Chandler, and Chandler is actually designed to be a very safe street. You mentioned the pedestrians. There's the only places where the pedestrians can cross Chandler all have traffic signals. The only places where drivers on Chandler can make a left turn to cross oncoming traffic, they have left turn on green arrow signals. Because Chandler has a fenced median between the east and westbound lanes, the only places where pedestrians can cross the street are at the signal-controlled intersections. At most of those locations that are near the temples, we have the signals already preset to cause the walk signal to come on automatically during the Sabbath and the holy high days. Along Chandler, we also have a marked bike lane on the street so that there is a striped lane exclusively for bicycles. For drivers coming out of driveways or the side streets on Chandler where there are not signals, because of the fenced median island, they're only able to make a right turn. It's a lot safer when you just need to look one direction in order to pull out of your driveway or your side street rather than worrying about cross traffic in the other direction. So it has a lot of design elements that already make it a lot safer than a traditional street.
So one would assume then that it would be reasonably safe as it is and not necessarily a reason to alter the speed limit.
Well, the speed limit is being set based upon the prevailing speed of the drivers on the street, but we have looked at the accident rates on that street and we do not have an accident pattern. So looking at the data, we see that most people are driving at 45 today, and we don't have any accidents out there or any other reasons to lead us to believe that that 45 miles an hour is not safe.
So if we're not having accidents, then why are we making this change to give us the opportunity to have some accidents? If it's working, why are we trying to fix it? I don't totally understand that.
Well, we're just trying to make that street eligible for enforcement of speeding by the police department.
But if we're not having accidents, why do we need that enforcement?
Well, we have a lot of requests by people that live in the area right now to do enforcement. There's a speed trailer the police department frequently is requested to deploy on that street.
Taking that point, we do have 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Madam Clerk, we're going to do all 4 since it's the same issue with the cyclists.
Let me just read. Item number 1 has to do with speed increases on Kester Avenue at the locations that are identified. Item 2 has to do with the speed limits on Chandler Boulevard at various strips, and item 3 has to do with the speed limit increases on Clybourne Avenue. So just to be clear.
Right on. So, you guys finished your initial presentation?
One more thing.
Sure, please, Brian.
Just again, that the Federal Highway Administration study, effects of raising and lowering speed limits, has shown that when we set a speed limit a lot lower than the critical speed of traffic, we're more likely to have accidents. So we're just concerned that it would actually be making it more likely to have additional accidents on Chandler by vehicles if we keep a lower speed limit than most of the cars are driving, because it creates a mix of people that are familiar with the area driving at 45 miles per hour, and then people that are unfamiliar with the area, maybe visiting a temple or people that live there, that follow the 35 miles an hour signs. And then you have a mix of a lot of fast traffic and then that slow person in front of them that everybody's trying to make a last-minute lane change to get around. So we're concerned about that. Also, the state law requires that we update the speed limit every 7 years. So we're just, trying to follow the state law on this one.
Okay. All right, folks, if it's okay with the general public, I'd like to do 1, 2, and 3 together since it's on the same issue, and they'll sit in the front row and react after it. So I see heads nodding. So could I ask Dennis to come on up, and Ray, and who's this? Alex, Don, Deborah, Glenn, and Barry. You know who you are there. That's about 7 or 8. And if it is okay with you, those others who are the same cards filled out can take this moment too to do it, so we can get it all clear as to what people are saying and why they're saying it. You heard the presentation from staff, so now you have a sense of where they're coming from. Please.
Same
And
story
Mr.
every
Levine,
time.
did you want to say anything more before they speak?
No, I'm good. I just wanted to make the point of, there's 3 things you could do, and there's a state law that precludes it, and I would rather see them give tickets, because the greatest deterrent is the enforcement, more than anything else.
And that's basically what, anyhow, was part of the conversation.
Oh, okay. My name is Dennis Heineman. I did a little calculation here that looking at the request for speed increases for this committee, starting in January 2008, we've had 36 for the San Fernando Valley. We've only had 2 elsewhere. Now, I thought about it, now how did we arrive at this seemingly endless increases of speeds? And one of the biggest factors we hadn't considered is car manufacturers have made it more comfortable to drive at a higher speed by isolating the driver from the vibration and the noise. And also the safety shell, the occupants of the car is increased dramatically. So even if they do have an accident, they're more likely to walk away than they were 20 years ago. However, the reaction time of human beings has not changed. So when they decide there's something in the way of their vehicle, it increases the distance to stop, increases dramatically when you change it from 35 to 45 miles an hour. And also the vulnerability of bicyclists and pedestrians is the same as it was decades ago. So if there is an accident, even if it's the same rate, the severity increases dramatically in severe injuries or death. In fact, when you're going 45, 50 miles an hour, the chance of death is pretty high if you hit a pedestrian or bicyclist. So to alleviate this, we have not looked at the tools that they have of traffic calming, narrowing the lanes. You can put bicycle lanes in. Chandler already has that. We can put coloration so that the peripheral vision of the driver is seemingly the road is narrower. We can, there's other things like trees, but obviously that takes years. It's just a psychological effect you have to have on the drivers to make them want to drive a little slower, that they're not as confident and comfortable driving at a high rate of speed. And we haven't discussed that. We keep going over the law.
Thank you very much for that thoughtful comment. Alex?
Hi, Alexis Lance, Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition. No problem. Thank you so much. So, as Dennis has brought up, engineering is one of the best solutions that we have to help control vehicle speeds. If we want to encourage people to drive 35 miles per hour, the posted speed limit on the majority of these streets currently, we need to look at how we design for 35 miles per hour. The streets right now are not designed for 35 miles per hour, and to add to that, while Chandler has a bike lane on it, Kester is actually listed in the bike plan to be a bicycle-friendly street, which is supposed to be a low-speed, low-traffic volume street. So we need to look at the engineering solutions that are going to encourage 35-mile-per-hour travel speeds so that when we implement this bicycle-friendly street, it's going to be safer for cyclists of all ages and abilities. Additionally, policy 1.1.6E in the bicycle master plan calls on the city of LA and the mayor's office to pursue changing the state law regarding the 85th percentile. This is something that we'd like to see council move forward with, and how we can legislatively address this issue, because it's going to continue. It does continue to come up with streets, and while we support enforcement on these roads, we shouldn't be rewarding speeders by constantly increasing the speed limit. If we raise it to 45, 7 years from now when you're going to go out, you're going to find the prevailing speed is 50. When you go out 7 years from then, now it's 55. We're going to constantly be raising the speed limit, and streets like Chandler, Kester, and whatnot are streets that have a mix of residential, schools, libraries, churches. These are streets that people live on and work on and enjoy, and we need to make sure that they're going to foster that type of activity. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your articulation, too.
Hi, my name is Don Ward, Northridge West Neighborhood Council member. First of all, I want to just say that it breaks my heart to hear an LAPD officer say that he can't enforce the speed limit, when in fact he can. He's just referring to the radar enforcement of speed limit. They can still do it the old school way. They can be there at a street, they can do stings, they can do timing. There's other ways of enforcing the speed limit than just using the radar. Let's not be lazy about this. We're encouraging a culture of bipolar speeding on our streets. The average speed to get around town through residential areas, through surface streets, is going to be 20 to 25 miles an hour no matter what you make the speed limit, because you got to stop at an intersection. No matter how hard they try to time the lights, it's up to the motorists to time the lights. In other words, if we put up a speed limit on Kester that says, here in this area you can go 45 miles an hour, and then in this area where there is a school by Fulton, you can only go 25 miles an hour, you're encouraging that driver to raise his speed and then slow down and then raise his speed. He's going to be speeding up to stop at a light. We've all seen it happen where car drivers speed up to a red light. We should be working to calm down speeding and even out the flow of traffic. If the LADOT would actually work to even out the flow of traffic so that car drivers are closer to the average speed that you can get across the city through surface streets, we would have a lot less death and stress on the streets. Now, I guarantee you that these guys haven't even done studies on death rate and injury rate, because those statistics are almost impossible to get, and they're only recently available to the public. I want to see their statistics. We did a road diet on Wilbur, they did, and they didn't even know the statistics leading up to that road diet. But what was happening, I'd like just a little extra time. Sure. What was happening was people were speeding erratically down that street. 8 people died in 10 years on a residential street, and nobody knew about it. We actually had to dig in to the statistics through the CHP to find it, and it was very hard to get that information. I guarantee you these guys haven't done any studies on Kester for death rate over a period of time. Guaranteed.
And let me just ask the question. You guarantee that officer dedicates his life every day, and I'm sure he looks at A's, accidents, and also there's another word they use in K's, which is tragedy.
I know about that.
So I know, but the way you say it, you ask that there's absolutely no respect for a man who's dedicated every day to try to keep people safe. I would appreciate you get all that information that you want, but the way you said it, guaranteed every time, you're challenging a man who is guaranteed his life every day to the people.
Can I answer that? No, I'm on the LAPD Bike Task Force. I work with Sergeant Krumer, and he himself wasn't able to get the statistics, and he tried to get the statistics. So I'm not saying anything about this man behind me. I'm saying that these statistics are not available to people.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. The two have spoken. Please, you can go, and I'm going to put other ones up. Glenn Bailey, come on up. And Deborah Murphy. Good. Hi, Deborah.
Hi.
Go for it.
Good day. I'm Deborah Murphy. I'm chair of the city's Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I'm not here representing the whole committee, just myself as chair. Founder of Los Angeles Walks, and I'm on the board of Streets Blog, a great resource for us here in Los Angeles. I'm also here speaking for Brad Smith from the LAUSD, in the Office of Environmental Health and Safety, and for Gerda McDonough, who's a member of the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council Transportation Committee. Our concerns are that we are in conflict with many things that we're doing in other activities at the city. We are trying to increase our public outreach. None of these projects have looked at talking to the LAUSD. No principal, no one from the facilities department at LAUSD was contacted on any of these projects. We have, as mentioned before, Fulton Elementary, Kester, Van Nuys High School. We have a magnet school located here. None of these were talked with any of the principals of those schools, and none of the property owners along the street. The staff reports that have been included in the council file are from 2009 and 2010. There is no outreach evidenced by any documents that the public can have that they've reached out to anyone in the last 2 years. The people that I have spoken with at these schools and others have not been spoken to. At the same time, we're doing our mobility element. We're looking at complete streets. We've all recognized that our streets are for people, not for the movement of cars, that we need to accommodate all users, pedestrians, cyclists, transit riders, and drivers. Remember, we are all pedestrians. You get out of your car, you get off the bus, you get off your bike, you're a pedestrian. We need to make streets safe for everyone. We have a new strategic plan we're supposed to work on to make it safe for kids to walk and bike to school. How isn't this in direct conflict with those issues? We need to have a moratorium on these speed limits until we resolve how we want to look at our streets. We have a whole complete streets responsibility to the state and to the federal government. May I have one more moment?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. As Don mentioned, if we're raising the speed limit on a street to 45 miles an hour and then we have a school at a 25-mile-an-hour zone, how is someone going to slow down from 45 to 25 and not maybe crash into the back of someone else or create people to crash behind him? So that is a direct concern. We know that speed kills. I mean, this is not some newfangled thing. These are not accidents that are happening. We do not use that word. That should be taken out of any lexicon in discussion of transportation issues. People are either speeding or they have a car that's not under proper maintenance. These are crashes, collisions that lead to injuries and deaths. We have to think of the people first. Why is it a priority for us to be giving out tickets? Is that the goal of the City of Los Angeles, to give out tickets, or is it to make a wonderful, livable city where people can feel safe?
I appreciate your comments. Is Barry Johnson here? Come on up too. And you're Ray?
Right.
Please, you go for it. And then Glenn.
Thank you, council members. Ryberg with the Safe Routes to School National Partnership. I just want to mention a few things. Is when I look at Kessler Avenue, I see about 6 schools along the length, not directly on it, but within a block or two of the boulevard, or the avenue. Also, when you go from 30 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour, a collision with a pedestrian, your rate of death goes from 50 to 80%. So you're going from a flip of a coin to an almost certainty of death in most of these cases. And then finally, there's vehicle code 22358.4 in California, which allows us to actually reduce the speed limits around schools down to 15 miles an hour in some cases. And since there's several schools along the stretch, I think we should actually be looking at what we can do to reduce the speed limits along here instead of increase them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have 2 more from this, unless anybody else didn't fill out a card. Why don't you go for it, please, Glenn.
Glenn Bailey. I'm Vice Chair of the City of Los Angeles Bicycle Advisory Committee. I am not presenting an official opinion of the committee on specific streets, except all the references to the bicycle plan is important, and specifically with regards to Chandler, where there's existing bicycle lanes. Let me just say that I ride that virtually every week. I will be riding it tonight after I get home from this meeting. And the bike lanes are very close. It's not a super wide street. There are 2 travel lanes, and then the bike lanes are right adjacent to the travel of the vehicles. Sometimes you have some extra feet of that. The outside lane is wider. That's not true all the way down Chandler. That's existing conditions. So I'm really concerned about that. North Hollywood High School, the magnet school, is right there at Colfax and Chandler. There's no reference in any of these reports about that school having been contacted. There's a lot of kids that walk up Colfax from school, to and from school. A lot of them, if you go and look there. It's a very residential street, very nice residential street. I think the argument of alternative means of enforcement should be taken very seriously, like the speed feedback signs. Let's deploy those. I've been on that street many times during the past year and never seen a speed feedback sign on that street. Let's get serious. Let's not use the excuse that we want to raise the speed limits by 10 miles an hour just so we can use the radar. Let's look at other alternatives. On Kester, it was also not noted in the report that Fulton Middle School and Van Nuys High School front on this stretch of the street. Also, it wasn't stated in the comments made that there's jet outs on Kester. It's not fully widened north of Victory, right close to the high school. These are dangerous conditions, and the state law was changed since these reports were done. It now allows the rounding down. You don't have to automatically round up to the next five miles. You now have the authority to round down. And I would say, based on these conditions, the jet outs, the schools on Kester, the fact it was reported at 39.2, round that down to 35. Round that down to 35.
I'm sorry, Tom. He finished. Thank you.
Yeah, but notice that they're taking 6 minutes and making it 2 minutes, so that's a whole stack of cards. So we're doing 1, 2, and 3 together.
Okay, if I have one more sentence, if I may.
I just want to make a motion before I leave, Bill, because I have an appointment I have to go to. I move the school issues be referred out of this committee and come back to this committee with comment from the public schools. They made great points about public schools. I believe the issue about enforcement should be clarified by the general manager of the department to say why we should raise the speed limits. I understand that's a struggle, but I want to see enforcement to slow people down. So I wanted to make that point. All these points about the schools, 1,000%. Not all of this is in the district I represent. So I think they should go get the feedback from LA Unified. They have a police force. But also have a very, very important statement from DOT. This is a tool that we have. If we don't have this tool, we lose it.
I got an idea for you, see if it makes sense. I'd like to amend your motion and put this on hold until we have an opportunity with the general manager and with the schools to
LA
get
Unified.
more insight.
And also,
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, of course.
If I could add also, it shouldn't just be public schools, because there are a number of synagogues and private schools along Chandler as well.
Take this motion to say that we'll take a period of time to analyze these issues.
90 days. I'm shocked. I'm shocked that the LA Unified was not part of this discussion, Brian Gallagher.
You didn't ask me if it was or not.
Okay.
Okay, bottom line.
I didn't ask you, but I'm shocked every time I see you because I love you.
All right, Tom, can we just say 90 days we'll continue this item and work these issues out? Do I have a second here?
Second.
3, unanimous. 90 days, we'll come back, and in the meantime, I would like the discussions, Mr. Bailey, that you, well, we can't vote. You haven't spoken yet, right? Okay, so we can't vote. Hold it 1 second because Tom wants to leave. That those alternative strategies you talked about are part of a working group that we'll create that can work with DOT and will come up with a plan in 90 days, one way or the other, whatever.
And just to add a thing, Mr. Chair, all future speed limit proposals must have a sign-off by LA Unified or School Impact.
Totally agree.
Don't come to the committee unless it has sign-off.
Before he runs, because I want you to comment, you haven't spoken yet. Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
I had one more sentence before.
Please, one more sentence.
Okay. At last night's meeting of the Bicycle Advisory Committee, the LAPD presented the committee with statistics of hit and runs for cyclists and pedestrians. During the last year, 2011, there were 514 cyclists that were victims of hit and run, and 759 pedestrians that were victims. And I'd like to enter this into the record for these items.
I appreciate that. Sir, you're up before we vote again.
Okay. Barry Johnson, Studio City Neighborhood Council Transportation Committee member. We don't support any of these speed increases. Frankly, we don't understand the formula in the state law that says you increase speed limits because you've got an average that's achieved from people who are speeding. Where does it stop? In 20 years from now, are we going to be driving 60 miles an hour down Chandler? It just seems like there's no, the state law perpetuates increase after increase. And in a city that's trying to encourage walking and bicycle riding, these increased speed limits just don't jive. And frankly, enforcement was talked about. It seemed like if we stick with our current speed limits, there's and try and enforce them, there's a lot of money to be made for a city that could use it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to ask Mr. Labange to make the motion again. But I want to thank the officer for your work, and I want to thank Brian for your incredible work in the department. You both came up with a plan, but Mr. Labange.
I think this matter should be moved 120 days just to give time, and that LA Unified School District and all private schools, religious schools, and others be consulted on all the routes to have the impact, and that it be then come back to the committee, and no future speed limit increases be made until there's a protocol worked out with LA Unified, because it should have a greater protocol.
I like that, Mr. Labange.
I'll second that.
Okay, this gentleman, personal privilege, go ahead, 1 minute.
I would just say, can you add on that the Switters data on collisions, pedestrians, cyclists, all that stuff be also studied for any stretch of street that you're going to be raising the speed limits on? Like I said, Wilbur went from 30 to 40, 8 deaths in 10 years.
Yeah, I'd be happy to add that
Okay.
as an amendment.
We've added that as part of the motion, and so at this point, again, Mr. Labange's motion is before us, 120 days to look at all aspects of this and how we can deal with it. If anybody else wanted another point, you can certainly talk to the head of the department in the back, and we can do it. We have a second for 120 days?
Yes,
With all those
second.
options? We are, okay, it's unanimous, thank you. We'll be back at this in 120 days. In the meantime, I challenge all the cyclists here to work closely with our offices and with the department to come up with a plan, as Mr. Labange is saying, that addresses all those issues. Thank you very much. 120 days, and let's make it work next time, whatever it is.
Mr. Chair, just ask another question. Thank you and your leadership. Item 6 is Yucca Street in Hollywood. This is bicycle
Item
friendly.
5.
Item 5.
Yeah.
The councilman of the district strongly supports it.
Okay.
On both sides of the street.
All right.
Mr. Garcetti and myself, that's our street. It's a positive, and I wanted to vote for it, but I do have
You
to
can
leave.
vote. No.
Okay.
No, there's no public comment cards on that issue. Please read it for the record, and we'll vote.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenbaum.
Item number 5 is the Labange Garcetti motion directing DOT report with the actions necessary to close Yucca Street to through vehicular traffic at Las Palmas, Cherokee, and Whitley Avenue.
Thank you.
Want to make a motion?
No, I just move approval of the department's report to do that, which opens up one of the streets so you can ride your bike through and around. You familiar with this, everybody? No opposition. Very good, okay.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Paul.
Seconds it? You agree with that? Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you. Oh, thank you very much.
Thank
Have a good
you,
day,
gentlemen.
everybody. See you later.
Very good.
Colleagues, if there's no issue on this, number 6, could you read it? And we want to put it on consent.
Item number 6 is the DOT report relative to the city accepting at no cost 2 highway easements from Caltrans located in downtown Los Angeles.
Okay, colleagues, have any problem with that? We'll move forward with it. Okay, unanimous, we're moving forward with that. We have 2 items left, folks, with public cards on it, and that would be item number 4 and item number 7. For item number 4, we have Lauren Cole and Nancy Friedman.
Item number 4 is the Rosendahl-Kretz motion directing DOT in consultation with the Planning Department to review and prepare comments on the traffic analysis in the draft environmental impact report for the Bergamot Transit Village Center project.
Before you speak, ladies, I'd like to ask staff to tell us what this is about, to add to it before you comment on it. Staff, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and honorable members of the committee. My name is Eddie Guerrero. I'm with the DOT Special Projects Section for the West Side Planning Office. And we did receive the draft environmental impact report for the Bergamot Transit Village Center, which is a City of Santa Monica mixed-use development project. Based on the information that was provided to us, the project consists of approximately 500,000 square feet of creative office space, about 31,000 square feet of retail, 325 units of different capacities of apartment units, and 16,000 square feet of restaurant space. We have had meetings with the City of Santa Monica prior to them developing the traffic study for the project, but we are just now reviewing the draft environmental impact report, and we will be suggesting very strongly that the mitigation that has been offered for the impacts that have been targeted for the City of LA are not adequate, and we want them to come back to the city to discuss a more broader mitigation plan to address those unmitigated impacts. And then there are various other details of the study that we will be discussing with them in terms of how the analysis was conducted for the project.
I really appreciate that's very refreshing for me. I put this motion in for obvious reasons. We're going to have a large impact on the communities that embrace all of Santa Monica, from the Palisades to Brentwood to West LA to Mar Vista to Venice and Del Rey. They are directly impacted by what Santa Monica does. I understand that even more approvals and segments in that area bring it up to 1.3 million square feet. The entire project area. One is this, one is that. So if they are open arms, letting you into the room on all of their aspects, and you're able to come back with suggestions, then the challenge will be obviously how do we make that work and how do we deal with them. But I appreciate your initial work on that. Please, I'd like to ask first Nancy Friedman to speak, who's also the president of Brentwood Neighborhood Council and a great community leader. Nancy.
Community Council.
There you go.
I'm Nancy Friedman, Chair of the Brentwood Community Council. Thank you very much for letting us speak. This is a part of a draft resolution that the Brentwood Community Council passed last night regarding this problem. The Brentwood Community Council opposes certification of the EIR or any permits or zoning changes for the Bergamot Transit Village Center or other similarly large projects on the west side of Los Angeles County until a regional plan is developed that properly takes into account the cumulative impact on traffic of the project together with all other reasonably foreseeable large projects in the area. Previously large-scale office projects in the area that were built without sufficient nearby housing have already caused extreme gridlock throughout the west side of Los Angeles during peak hours. Further adding to this congestion by approving projects that are larger than current zoning permits without ensuring that appropriate infrastructure is available is not acceptable to our area's residents, workers, students, customers, and visitors. Once the cumulative impact of such projects is known, projects that are larger than is allowed under current zoning should be downsized to a level such that the number of significantly impacted intersections is minimized. A plan should have the review and approval of all impacted municipalities, not only the city where this project is located, which is Santa Monica. So basically, this seems to be working out with what they've bringing Los Angeles into the picture. I just wanted to add that RAC, the Western Regional Association of Councils, are all submitting things because this literally will branch out into the whole west side area. And right now, if you put more cars there, they can't move anyway. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
I will submit this for you.
Submit it for the record and obviously use that as part of the direction coming from this committee. Please, hi.
I'm Lauren Colt, Chair of the Brentwood Community Council Transportation Committee and also on the South Brentwood Residents Association Board, which is also very concerned about this project. We appreciate that LADOT is going to take a look at the project. This isn't totally an issue of mitigations. The entire area, already the water garden's about 1.3 million square feet, so we're basically saying we want to double the office space in that area. There's also some other things that are not, the draft EIR already says that this project on its own, without taking into account all the other projects in the area, will have significant unmitigable impacts on streets in Los Angeles like Wilshire, Barrington Avenue, and Bundy Avenue. But there's some other streets that need to be added. It didn't take into account gridlock on Sunset, which is already there. The EIR did not go east of the freeway on Olympic and Pico and into Westwood, which is also gridlocked. And the EIR also doesn't take into account some large parcels on the Los Angeles side that haven't been developed yet, like Bundy and Olympic, and there's a couple of parcels at Barrington and Wilshire. And it didn't take into account projects in Los Angeles like the Wilshire bus lane. So we shouldn't have projects in Los Angeles not be able to be built because Santa Monica is overbuilt in the area. So we really need to look at this whole region as a whole and obviously convince Santa Monica to listen to our side of the fence as well. Thanks.
Well, I certainly appreciate what you said, both of you, and I wish they would listen to our side on a lot of issues because they're not an island to themselves. They happen to be in the heart of the 11th district. We're 300,000, they're 86,000, and a significant amount of the gridlock we experience now is going into Santa Monica. That is why I'm excited about the Expo line. That will alleviate some of that. Obviously, I feel as we do all measure our 12 simultaneous projects, thanks to this mayor's leadership on it, we'll be able to work on the paralysis we're in. But just for you all to know, the Wilshire North Ramp exits will be closed May, June, and July. So we have a situation that's quite obviously frustrating for Brentwood and the other neighbors. Thank you very much, both of you, for your leadership on it. Thank you for your comments. When can we get a report back?
I am working on a comment letter right now. I'll be more than happy to share that draft with your deputy staff. We have been in good contact with Mr. Paul Backstrom here, and I'll be happy to provide him with the progress of those comments as early as probably as next week.
Okay, what I'd like to do is re-agendize this in a month from now, if it's all right, colleagues. We'll pass this on as is. What, do we note and file on this, or what?
You can continue the item to the next meeting. Do you think you'll have the report ready for the next meeting?
Well, I'll have a draft letter that I actually would like your deputy staff to take a look at, but the deadline to provide initial comments to this draft DIR is actually February 27th.
Well,
so we want to make sure we meet that deadline, but I can tell you that in our comments to meet that deadline, we will be asking them, certainly recommending that they need to continue these discussions with the City of LA and LADOT on specific issues that need to be addressed by this project and the study that was prepared.
I will say there's a lot of us in the room that feel that way, and, and if the 27th is their deadline, maybe we can ask for an extension right now from them so that our city can engage in this issue properly.
We will be asking for that.
I guess the deadline has been extended to March 12th, so...
Okay, so it's now March 12th. Okay, when is our meeting right before the March 12th? With a week or two. I'd like people to hear it, what we know and where we're at before.
John White, City Clerk, your first meeting in March is scheduled for March 14th.
So this is March 12th.
Our next meeting is February 22nd. We can...
And then the next one after that
would be after the, yeah.
If I can say, Mr. Chairman, we don't really expect them to be able to address our concerns by the completion for comment for the draft DIR. We know there are additional discussions that need to happen, and we fully expect them to meet us on those requests, if you will, to have those discussions beyond this deadline to submit comment for the draft DIR.
Let me ask City Attorney this. Can we send an official letter saying that they should blow that deadline down the road a piece further so that we can get all this input and have this interaction here beyond the 12th?
Well, you can certainly send a letter requesting that they do so.
Okay. Send a letter, if it's all right, colleagues, to them saying we want to extend this, not to March 12th, but to, let's say, April 1st. That gives us maybe some time, or even April 15th, something like that, so we can truly get together and get our act together with them. Or is that?
Well, if you approve the motion that's before you right now, send that to council. That'll give the direction to the department, and then you can work out the specifics on what the comments are. But I would recommend you approve the motion.
To me. Do you have a motion on that?
So moved.
So moved. Second. Okay. So unanimously, we will send us with that recommendation, but make it clear to them that we need more time to see exactly where they're going and what our options are. And I'd like you to also, in this, have the planning department. How do we do this? Can we addend the motion right now?
It already includes the planning department.
Pardon me?
The motion already directs the planning department to work with DOT.
And what about DOT?
DOT with the planning department to prepare the comments.
Great. So with those two bodies working on it, I look forward to what you're going to say next, and we have a motion. Please.
Council members, if I could ask you to reopen number 5, the Yucca Street motion.
Okay, before we do, we voted this out of committee. It's clear. So item number 7 is done. Thank you, sir.
Since there were no public comments on that, I just wanted you to reopen because I think you need to designate Yucca Street as a bicycle-friendly street in order to close that street or to do what we want to do with inverters.
So we reopen that. Do you want to read what we need to know?
That was item number 5, which was the Lebanese Garcetti motion directing DOT report with actions necessary to close Yucca Street to through vehicular traffic at Las Palmas, Cherokee, and Whitley Avenues.
The bicycle plan allows you to designate streets that are not specifically defined currently in the bicycle plan as bicycle-friendly streets. Under the California Vehicle Code section 21101F, it needs to be part of the general plan. The bicycle plan is now part of the general plan and is part of the transportation report. I had the DOT staff did look at that. But you do need to designate that street as a bicycle-friendly street.
Do I have that designation, colleagues, on that? Yes. Okay, so moved, so ordered, done. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other?
That brings us to item number 7.
Item number 7.
Which is a DOT report relative to comments regarding the draft 2012 Regional Transportation Plan / Sustainable Community Strategy being prepared by the Southern California Association of Governments.
We have Glenn Bailey here for that, and Ray and Alexia. Do we want a staff report first? Let's do our staff report real quick.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm Miles Mitchell, Senior Management Analyst with the Department of Transportation. And Naomi, would you like to introduce yourself here, and then I'll continue?
Naomi Guth, Department of City Planning.
All right. We have a few prepared remarks on behalf of DOT. If take a few minutes, is that all right?
Great.
Okay. We're here, both departments, Transportation and Planning, are here to present the city staff report on the draft 2012 Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy prepared by SCAG. And Mr. Weezar, if you'll indulge me, you heard these yesterday. All right. LADOT has submitted a revised report dated February 6, 2012 for your review. And we are trying to meet the due date for public comments to be received by SCAG, which is February 14th. This report was presented to the Plum Committee yesterday and to this committee today and is scheduled for City Council on Friday. By way of background, every 4 years, SCAG prepares a regional transportation plan for the six-county region. A major goal of the RTP is to meet the federal conformity requirements for air quality. For 2012, SCAG is preparing not only the RTP, but also a Sustainable Community Strategy, or SCS, as required by SB 375. The SCS, as I'm sure you all are familiar with, will seek to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from cars and light trucks by means of several strategies, including integration of land use and transportation planning, transit system expansion, and transportation demand management. The SCS is intended to achieve greenhouse gas emission reductions of 8% per capita by 2020 and 13% per capita by 2035, compared with 2005 levels. SCAG's analysis indicates that the draft RTP SCS will achieve these targets. LADOT has coordinated the preparation of these comments on the RTP SCS with other city departments that are most impacted by the RTP. LADOT very much appreciates the cooperation of the departments of Los Angeles World Airports and City Planning, each of which have provided comments. And to expedite our report, I'd like now to just move to the area of primary comments on behalf of DOT with regard to the RTP SCS, which is the actual project list appendix. As you may know, the RTP SCS is a vast document. It's probably over 2,000 pages, the main document, all the appendix, and there's a program environmental impact report. So there's a lot to review, and we've had our hands full, but DOT has basically focused its comments on the project list. And the project list is divided into three categories. First, there is what is known as the Federal Transportation Improvement Program, or FTIP, which forms the foundation of the RTP project investment strategy and represents the first 6 years of already committed funding. Secondly, the financially constrained list of projects are those not included in the FTIP, but which have reasonably available funding. And third, the strategic plan representing an unconstrained list of potential projects that the region would pursue given additional funding and commitment. Now, LADOT staff has reviewed the FTIP list and the constrained project list, and with one exception that we do identify in our report, it's a Transit Bureau project having to do with replacing 5 transit buses. We found that the FTIP list and the constrained project list do include all of the projects that should be there as far as we understand, and they also include all of the metro projects that are included in the 2009 long-range transportation plan. However, we do recommend that projects be added to the strategic plan, which is a kind of a wish list. And we have identified, and in our attachment, 90 projects involving highway improvements that we wish to be added to the strategic plan list. And subsequent to the Plum meeting yesterday, we have actually added 2 projects to that list. One having to do, at the request of Council members Parks and Perry, doing engineering and eventual construction and improvements along Slauson Boulevard from the 110 freeway west to Crenshaw. That's one addition. And the other one, at the request of Councilmember Weezer, to add in the streetcar project, the downtown Los Angeles streetcar project. So prior to the meeting today, I gave Mr. White copies of our revised project list, which is attachment E, and we'd like you to consider that amended project list today, this afternoon, if you would. And then, and very important, concerns, legitimate concerns have been, legitimate concerns have been raised regarding whether our project list focuses too much on highway projects. And we don't believe that it does, because in our report, we specifically call out that we want the RTP to include the Los Angeles Bicycle Plan and mobility hubs, both of which are very much related to active transportation and transportation demand management, two primary strategies that are in the RTP. And to the extent that the bicycle plan and mobility hubs are not in the funding allocated for active transportation and TDM in the constrained plan, we want those projects to be added to the strategic plan. And the reason why we did not add them project by project, particularly with regard to the bicycle plan, is because the bicycle plan includes about 1,500 projects, and it's about $472 million. So by reference, we believe that by referencing the Los Angeles Bicycle Plan in the text of our document, we in effect have included it, if you will, the entire range of projects, about 1,500. And so the report that we're offering for you today does include not only additional highway projects, but also all of the projects, again, numbering approximately 1,500 in the bicycle plan. It is, in effect, a recommendation for multimodal additions to the strategic plan. So those are essentially our comments, and DCP has done a lot of very fine work in the area of planning, and I would turn it over now to Ms. Guth.
Thank you. The Department of City Planning focused on the land use issues in the document. This is the first time under SB 375, the RTP has to include a sustainable community strategy, and it requires metropolitan planning organizations across the state, like SCAG, to integrate their transportation planning in the RTP with land use planning and housing planning. So this sustainable community strategy has to reflect the RENA numbers and prove that they can be accommodated, and set a land use strategy, as Miles said, to achieve the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So we basically looked at the plan to see if the projections for growth and how the city accommodates growth comports with the city's adopted community plans, or basically our general plan. We basically found that it does. There are some outliers that we want to raise, and on the first page of attachment D in your report, we summarize 5 key areas that we want to raise with SCAG. We're concerned about the definition of high-quality transit corridors. Yes, we are focusing growth at transit nodes, stations, corridors. We want to make sure that the language described in the SCS is careful, because we're very discriminating about exactly where we focus growth. Secondly, they have an exhibit where they talk about urban centers that's not well defined, and it shows some growth centers in LA City that don't seem to align with other figures in the document. So we're asking for some explanation, clarification. Thirdly, we want to relay to SCAG some of the specific differences we've seen when we looked at the land use representations on the figures included in the SCS. We looked at some detailed maps and compared it to our general plan and found some areas where they show higher residential densities, for example, than we show, changes in single-family neighborhoods that we know are stable and not going to change. And there are just some things that they may not have known. They were looking strictly at our general plan, and we know that there's some additional land use regulations that may pose limitations. As Miles referred, the bicycle plan, we want to ensure it's accurately reflected. There's an exhibit that shows a network of bicycle facilities across the Skag region. It appears not to include the 2010 bicycle plan. And then lastly, regarding CEQA streamlining provisions, SB 375 included the opportunity to streamline the environmental review on certain projects that meet certain parameters. We see that as an implementation tool, a carrot, so to speak, to implement the kind of land use strategies that are contained in the SCS. So we just want to make sure that that's correctly framed within the document and not misunderstood by a reader to mean wholesale categorical exemptions or such. So, thank you.
Well, thank you both for your good analysis. Just sit in the front row over there, because I might ask you to come back after the comments to address maybe some of their comments as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Glenn, come on up. Ray, Alexa, and the three. And I did you fill out a card, Stephen? It's gone.
I think Glenn took off.
Please.
Good afternoon. My name is Ry Berg, and I'm here on behalf of the Southern California Safe Routes to School Network. And I'd like to thank you and the city staff for all the hard work they've done on behalf of active transportation already here in the city of Los Angeles. We feel that the city is taking great strides to improve bicycle and pedestrian safety through the implementation of multiple Safe Routes to School projects, the adoption and implementation of the Bicycle Master Plan, and also in the current revision of the mobility element. I'm here today to ask the Transportation Committee to champion the work that Los Angeles is already doing at the local level in their communications and in this letter to SCAG regarding the 2012 RTP. As you may know, walking and biking make up 21% of the trips in the SCAG region, and unfortunately 25% of the fatalities. We also suffer from a 24% obesity rate, and given this, we feel that the 1% allocated to these modes in the RTP is insufficient. The Los Angeles County Department of Public Health recently released a methodology recommending about $40 billion in the RTP, or 5 to 8% of the funding. In addition, while the funding for active transportation in the RTP has been increased over the last rendition, $4.8 billion, or 80% of it, will not be available until after 2026, so it's backloaded in the plan. And for the years 2016 to 2025, the funding for active transportation will be half of what it currently is on an annual basis. We therefore are asking the City of Los Angeles, while you move forward with your bicycle master plan and repairing your sidewalks, we see that there's going to be an additional need here at the city level for more funding. And so we're asking the city to stand with us and our partners and ask SCAG to increase funding for active transportation in the RTP, and also request that a larger portion of the funding be allocated during the first half of the plan to maintain or increase the funding on an annual basis. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Staff, I'm sure you heard that. I'm going to ask you to respond to that. It seems pretty logical to me. Please.
Great. Thanks, Alexis from the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition. Thank you again for your time. I'm going to just sort of back up what Ry's already said. We've been really engaged with the many advocates working across the 6 counties that make up the SCAG region to advocate for active transportation funding. And what we really see as being important, or what I really see as being important here, is that the City of Los Angeles can really be a leader. We have a large representation on the SCAG board. Los Angeles County, there are many cities that are actively working to improve active transportation, and there's a real we really need you all to step up at the SCAG level and help be a leader for the rest of the counties that maybe are not as far along as the city and the county of Los Angeles are on this issue. As Ry pointed out, you know, we are going to be implementing a lot of transportation projects, a lot of public light rail, bus improvements within the first many years of this plan. And so it's really important to make sure that the bicycle and pedestrian activities are happening at the same time, so we make sure that our connections to transit are going to work across the county and across the region. So we encourage you to think regionally and help be a leader for active transportation at the SCAG level. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. Where's Glenn?
He had to leave.
Okay. Staff, come on back up for what I think it makes a lot of sense. How do we accelerate SCAG on this? How do we push into the next 5 to 7 years more funds and more support so we can continue the momentum we're building under a 5-year bicycle plan?
Well, I'll defer here to Tom Carranza with our department in just a moment.
Sure.
But just sort of at a macro level, just to give you a little orientation on this, what's going on at SCAG. I, as you may know, am the sub-regional coordinator for Los Angeles to SCAG, have been for many years. I also am a member of the Technical Advisory Committee, which meets monthly, generally, at SCAG. And I can tell you that the allocation of funding in the RTP for what's now called active transportation has been discussed probably more than any other single topic at SCAG. And SCAG has responded by increasing, as the former speaker here from the public indicated, they have increased funding in this RTP over the 2008 RTP dramatically. And they have been asked why they haven't increased it more. And finally, the most recent answer from SCAG is that there's about $6 billion in the present RTP for active transportation, I believe. And the response now from SCAG is that's not all that's going on in this area, because about $4 billion, they calculate, is going to be spent by local cities and county transportation commissions and counties and so forth for bicycle and pedestrian improvements. So that brings it from $6 billion to $10 billion, an additional $4 billion. So which does increase the funding share, if you will. So those are just two general comments. First, it's much more than 2008, and then when you add in the effort by localities, it's more than it would appear to be in just the RTP.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Carranza with LADOT's Transportation Planning Bureau. Following up on what Miles said, the $6 billion allocated for active transportation, that represents 1.3% of the proposed investment in the transportation system. To highlight what that means, for the 6-county SCAG region, that means increasing our bike lanes, or actually our bikeway infrastructure, from about 4,300 miles in the 6-county region to about 10,000 miles. And it also brings about 12,000 miles of deficient sidewalks into better repair and in compliance with ADA. So, and we're fully supportive of increasing the allocation for active transportation, which is why a main focus of our report is to include the bike plan in the SCAG project list.
Okay. I had a series of questions, but I think you answered most of them. But let me just say that we will move forward with this, assuming my colleagues will support it. But I want you to take a meeting with Ray in the back there and with Alexis and have a more thorough discussion. They've done a lot of homework on this. And wherever we can improve the SCAG relationship for the issues we care about, I would like to be able to do that.
Sure. We'd be happy to do so.
Okay. Do I have a motion or questions? No questions. Okay, a motion to move forward with this?
As amended with the revised list.
That's right, as amended. Okay. Second. Unanimous. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
I'm running a meeting, Jane. Okay, are there any other comments, any other discussions? Okay, meeting is adjourned. Cyclists, why don't you just stay in here and we'll have a little conversation. Thank you.